Hello everyone, welcome back my YouTube channel. I am from Sri Venkateshwara College of Engineering, Bangalore, Department of Information Science and Engineering. My name is Suhasariam, library number 23 IS 1605, semester first year, section I chair, subject mathematics, subject code BMATS 101, topic applications of polar coordinates. Introduction of polar coordinates. The polar coordinate systems is a two-dimensional coordinate system in which each point on a plane is determined by a distance from a reference point to the angle from a reference direction. The reference point is called the pole and the ray from the pole is reference direction in the polar axis. The distance from the pole is called the radial coordinate. Radial distance or simply radius has an angle is called the angular coordinate. Polar angle. Angles in a polar notation are generally expressed in either degree or radians. Graphical representation of polar coordinates. A circle, B coordinate, C one loop, D inner loop. Graphical explanation. In polar coordinates, points are represented by a distance from the origin and angle measured counterclockwise from a reference direction. This graphical representation is often called a polar plot or polar graph. Radius. The distance from the origin to the point. Angle. The angle formed by the line segment con- con- connecting the origin and the point, measured in the degrees or radians. To plot a point in polar coordinates, measure the angle theta from the reference direction, extend a line from the origin in that direction for the specialized radius r. The resulting polar plot can depict various shapes like circle, lines, or more complex curves depending on the functions describing the relationship between r and theta. For example, the polar equation r equals 2 divided by sine 3 divided by theta would create a polar plot with three petals resembling flower. Understanding polar coordinates is useful in contexts like physics, engineering and mathematics especially while dealing with circular and symmetrical patterns. Polar coordinates formula. Cartesian coordinates are a way of representing points in a two dimensional plane using a distance from a fixed point called as a pole origin and the angle from a fixed direction, usually the positive x axis. The polar coordinates of a point P can be denoted as distance from the origin to the point P, and theta is the angle that lines connecting the origin to P makes with the positive x axis. The conversion between polar and Cartesian coordinates can be done using these formulas as the follow: Cartesian to polar coordinates, polar to the Cartesian coordinates. Applications of polar coordinates in physics. Rotational motion. Polar coordinates are often used to describe the motion of an object undergoing circular or rotational motion. The angular coordinates represents the angle of rotation while the radial coordinates gives the distance from the center. Electric and magnetic field. In electromagnetism, polar coordinates are employed to express the electric and magnetic fields around charged or magnetized objects. This is particularly useful when dealing with the systems exhibiting the cylindrical and spherical symmetric. Wave propagation. Polar coordinates can be useful in the description wave propagation, especially circular or spherical waves. This is a relevant in the fields like acoustic and optics. Gravitational fields. When analyzing the gravitational fields in symmetric objects such as a circular plates or rings, polar coordinates simplify the mathematical expressions and make it easier to describe the gravitational effects at various points. Dynamics. Polar coordinates are applied in the fluid dynamics too describes the velocity field and rotational fluids as well as in the problems involving circular containers or rotating systems. Heat conduction. In problems involving heat conduction with radical symmetrical polar coordinates and advantages, this is a common in sequences like heat flow through a cylindrical or spherical object. Quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, polar coordinates are used to solve certain types of problems, such as those involving spherical symmetrical, like the hydrogen atoms. Optics. When dealing with the optical systems, which rotational symmetrical, such as lenses or mirrors, polar coordinates simplify the analysis of light rays and image formation. Application in engineering and design. Rotating machinery analysis. Engineering engineers use polar coordinates to represent force, moments, and velocities in rotating machinery such as turbines or engines. This helps in understanding the dynamic behavior of the components. Antenna design. Antenna pattern, which describe how antennas transmit or receive signals in different directions, are often represented in polar coordinates. This helps engineering visualize and optimize the antenna's performance. Robotics and motion control. In robotics, polar coordinates are used to plan and control the motion of robotic arms. This is partially useful when dealing with the circular or rotational task, allowing precise control of the end effector. Wind turbines analysis. Polar coordinates are applied to study wind turbines. Performs parameters like wind speed and direction are often represented in the polar form to analyze the affecting and power output to the turbines under varying conditions. Polar coordinates provide a convenient way to represent and analyze rotational components, simplifying complex calculation and visualization pattern or relationship is in a more intuitive manner. Conclusion. Polar coordinates offer a flexible way to represent points in the plane using distance and angle, proving curical in diverse fields. This simplify complex geometry problems. It has accuracy in physics and engineering applications and in the fundamental in the computer graphics. From astronomy to navigation, polar coordinates provide a powerful tool for the expressing relationships and analyzing phenomena with X. Thank you. If you like my video, do share, subscribe, and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching the video.